Okay, let's get started with dessert because that's what everybody's been looking forward to anyhow. The chocolate hazelnut truffle tart is an incredibly easy dessert to do. This is gluten-free. It can be parve or dairy, whichever you prefer, and it's going to look so impressive on the table and taste really good. Let's get started. Now you'll notice on the recipe we have both volume measures and weights. I generally prefer baking by weight if we can. That's how professionals bake, and the degree of precision is so much better. I mean, what's a cup of flour? The way you measure it, the way I measure it. Maybe it's 3 ounces, maybe it's 4 ounces, but everybody knows what 100 grams of something is. So, and I really strongly recommend, it's not that expensive to get a decent digital scale, and I will show you how we're going to use that to make this tart. Okay. I prefer using small deli containers to measure. They're easy to wash and everybody always has them around the house. Remember, you have to tare the weight of your measuring container. So this is simple. Just going to pour 156 grams of the hazelnut flour into our container. There's going to be some lumps in it. That's okay. You're going to be working this out with your fingers anyhow. Last gram or two always takes a little longer. Okay, very simple. We're going to pour that into our mixing bowl. Okay, I've measured the coconut flour exactly the same way. Coconut flour can be a little bit touchy. I strongly recommend that you do not substitute that in a recipe for anything else that hasn't been written for it. The coconut flour soaks up water like a sponge. I'm going to measure out our brown sugar exactly the same way. And you know how you're always told you're supposed to pack brown sugar? Not when you're doing it by weight, because 25 grams is 25 grams, no matter how you pack it. And here's where you can decide if your dish is going to be dairy or not, depending on what you're serving it with. I'm going to use coconut oil. It matches the flavors of our filling very well. So that needs to be melted, same as if it were butter. Then we're going to add the melted coconut oil or melted butter or whatever fat you're using. And a pinch of salt. I like using kosher salt if it's not specified because you can really feel what you're doing. You can't feel so much with table salt. Then we're just going to get our hands in here because it wasn't that hot. And we're going to mix the dough to work in the butter until we get a good dough consistency. Your hands are the best kitchen tools ever made. Your hands are great kitchen tools. Don't hesitate to use them. That's what the kitchen sink is for. Wash afterwards. All right, now we've got this all mixed together in a roughly sandy consistency. A lot of times I will use a straight-sided tart ring. It gives you a very contemporary look. In this case, honestly, I do prefer the fluted tart pan with the removable bottom. I'm going to make this tart a little bit unusually because these flours are a little difficult to work with and don't hold together the same way normal flours do. We're going to start by building the rim of the tart. So we're just going to take handfuls of dough and press it around the side, making sure you get into all the crevices and packed in really well. While you're doing this, make sure you get into the seam where the sides and the bottom meet. And do try to go for as even a wall as you can. After you have your wall built up, take your remaining dough, just pour it in the bottom of the pan. And form your bottom crust, packing down evenly. If you find it helpful, you can take the bottom of a drinking glass to help you compact it. Anything small, solid, and firm. And try to go around the edge also and keep your rim level with the top of your pan. You know, this isn't a dough that's going to rise at all. This handles just like any cookie crust or nut crust. So once the crust is in the tart pan, Try to even the edges off a little, gives you a little more finished presentation, which looks good. We're going to put it in the oven to bake for about 16 to 18 minutes. Put the tart pan on a baking sheet, because you remember, if you've got a removable bottom, you can't exactly pick it up without having issues. If you have a Silpat, use it. That will help keep the tart from sliding around on you. If you don't have one, don't worry about it. So 16 to 18 minutes at 350. So tart crust is done right now, and you can see why I didn't mention anything about going by golden brown color previously, because frankly the color looks just about the same as it did before. It started out golden brown, it ended up golden brown. We're going to let that crust cool and then come back and make the filling. So our crust is just about cool, and it's smelling like a great big hazelnut cookie, which is a really good thing. I'm going to get started on the filling. I've chopped up 9 ounces of bittersweet chocolate, bittersweet being about 70 to 72%. And we're going to melt that over a double boiler, a bain-marie, whatever you want to call that. My water is simmering, so let's get over there and get this melted. Remember, when you're melting chocolate over water, keep your water at a simmer, not a boil, and make sure the bottom of your bowl does not touch the water. What we're trying to do is melt the chocolate by gentle heat. We need to be careful about not burning it. Chocolate is melted. We've stirred it to make sure it's completely smooth, and we're going to let it cool a little bit, because otherwise we're going to put the eggs in it, we're going to get chocolate scrambled eggs, which might be a great idea, but I'd rather not find out. Now you notice I said we were doing things by weight, and I'm not weighing my eggs. There's a reason for that. Standard American large size eggs, the content of them will be 50 grams, give or take a gram. But basically you can say that an egg is 50 grams. So I've just measured, taken the 2 eggs, and we're going to heat those ahead of time. And we're just doing that ahead of time because it's easier to break them up separately in a bowl than it is once you put it in the chocolate, which is thicker. And from here, this is just mixing. This is why I'm saying this is so simple. We're going to mix in our coconut milk. When you use coconut milk, make sure, one, that you're buying coconut milk, not cream of coconut. Cream of coconut makes great cocktails, does not make such great desserts. And before you open the can, shake it very, very well. The coconut cream and the coconut milk will separate, and you want to be sure you're getting it reintegrated. In this recipe, you can use dairy milk if you want to do that. If you want to stay Pareve, I like the coconut milk. Make sure you're using full fat. We want the fat in this recipe to give texture and mouthfeel to the filling. It looks as if it's starting to seize up a little. Don't worry about it. We're going to be great. Just keep beating it, whisking it. You'll be fine. And you see it's integrating and it's smoothing out again. Let's get the flavorings in. I'm going to use half a teaspoon of vanilla. There are Passover vanillas available. That is not a problem so much. And we're going to use, now I'm using, because it's not Passover right now, orange oil. Orange oil is not the same as orange extract. Please don't use orange extract here. That gives you a very artificial, cough syrupy, hard candy-ish flavor. It's not what you're looking for. If you have a problem getting orange oil for Passover, and you probably will, what I recommend is ahead of time, zest an orange, peel it off in large strips with a vegetable peeler, infuse your coconut milk. Heat it over low heat, put the orange zest in, let it simmer for a few minutes, and then let it rest in the refrigerator overnight. Take your orange peel out, let your coconut milk come back to room temperature, and you'll have orange infused coconut milk. That'll work very, very well also. What I will tell you about the orange oil though is it can stain, so be careful about not getting it on your clothes. And what you also may have noticed is I'm working on a towel here. That is because bowls skid on surfaces like this, and the towel just helps me keep everything in one place. Now, if you want to get a head start on your Passover prep, you can make the crust up to this point, wrap it well and refrigerate it, and leave it for a few days. It'll work just fine that way, and it gives you a little bit more breathing room. But otherwise, we can go straight ahead and we can fill the tart, trying to not have air bubbles in there if we can help it. And this is where also you're going to see the value of having the Silpat on your baking sheet. It would definitely, once you've got a full shell, you're very happy when things are not sliding on you. Try to get everything you can out of the bowl, boy, because that is the really good stuff. And if you have it, small offset spatula or palette knife, wonderful, wonderful kitchen tool, probably my single favorite tool. I know I've mentioned that one before. Just even it out as best as you can. And we are going to put the tart back in the oven for 20 to 22 minutes. You want your filling to be pretty well set, not cracking, not overly dry, but firm. And then we'll be back when this is ready to come out of the oven. Okay, look at the surface of the tart now. You see it, there's just a little wobble to it, but not much. It's mostly set. It's done and it's ready to cool. So we're going to let that cool completely at room temperature, and then we're going to refrigerate it until it's fully set. And after that, we're going to decorate it. All right, our hazelnut truffle tart has rested in the fridge for a few hours, and it's looking beautiful now, dark, rich color, and that's how it's going to taste too. It's going to be rich and creamy and absolutely delicious. Let me show you how to garnish it. A couple different ways. I gave you a recipe for candied orange zest. It's really simple, and I didn't feel that we needed to demo it, but this is the zest it was sitting in the fridge overnight in its syrup here. I took it out and put some on a plate to make it easier to work with. And you can use your fingers. It's just a lot easier to not get them all sticky. This is one thing you can do. Another thing you could do is sprinkle some cocoa nibs. If you want to do that, I would suggest doing that a little bit after you take it out of the oven. But cocoa nibs are nice. It adds a little bitter. This adds a little more sweet to what you're doing, and that can be a little bit nice. It just breaks up some of the richness a little. I wanted to show you a few other ways you could garnish the tart. Very simply with a chopped hazelnuts or halved hazelnuts, or with candied cocoa nibs. I didn't give you the recipe for that, but it's very easy to make. And if you're interested in having that recipe, just let me know, I'll get it to you. Remember to take the tart out of the refrigerator a while before you want to serve it. It tastes a lot better at room temperature. And let me also remind you that if you can't find hazelnut flour, you can always make your own by grinding up the same amount of hazelnuts. Make sure you grind it up with just a little bit of your sugar. That keeps it from turning into hazelnut butter. So wishing you a happy and Zisen Pesach.